Yeah, I just gave it a. Well, how do you do, Buckaroos? I entitled this one. uh, it's Friday Night Live with the Beer Whisperer. No funny name this time. Hey, here's my issue. I've been having camera issues, as you know, Jeff. I tried
Yeah.
to do a live video on St. Patrick's Day, and I wouldn't. I've been struggling for months with this thing. But finally, I restarted it and rebooted it, and I don't know, tried to uninstall and then install it back. So right now it's working. So I want to try to get a video in just to see if I can even get this thing to work. So right now I've got the Dogfish Head 90-minute IPA. I'm going to pop right now, and with
Yeah,
me
I
is
know.
Jeff Lyons from NEBR that many of you should know. So Jeff, what are you drinking while I pop and pour this one?
Well, I'm being my NEBR self, my New England Beer Review self. I'm drinking a beer from Shipyard in Maine. It's their Monkey Fist IPA. It comes out once a year, usually in the late winter, and I'm drinking it now. Let me think. I think I can't remember. It's like 7%. See, 6.9% ABV, and they introduced it for the first time, I think, about 4 years ago. I had it then. This particular bottle, my son bought me a 6-pack of the beer because he was just trying to be nice to Dad, I guess, because he's been moved in with me, and I'm covering all his bills and all that fun stuff, you know. And he moved in with me and said, "Thanks, Dad, for helping me out all this time. Here's a 6-pack of Monkey Fist." I said, "Sounds good to me, buddy boy." So I did.
Nice. Well, I've got this just came to my neck of the woods, Jeff. I know it's been around your neck of the woods for a while, but we just got it a couple weeks ago. The Dogfish Head 90-minute IPA, 9%, 90 IBUs. So I kind of went crazy when I first got here and bought like 7 6-packs and blew a month's worth of beer money.
Well, I actually we don't get the 120 because New Hampshire law requires only 12% ABV, for the alcohol top alcohol by volume. So I think I want to say the 120 is around like 14 or 15% or something ungodly like that. But we do get the 60 and then we get the 90. And we get a lot of their other brews, some of their their 750 milliliter bottles as well. So, they've been around New Hampshire a long, long time. I have had the 120. I think I've picked up in Massachusetts. So, as the higher, I guess the higher the longer length of time they hop it, the more expensive it gets.
Yeah.
I think the 60 IPA and the 90 IPA and the 120 IPA probably jumps up 10 or 20% for each minute, I guess. I don't know.
Well, they add more alcohol or more malt to get the alcohol up, and then more hops. That's going to raise the price. But yeah.
Yeah.
I haven't seen the 120 in my neck of the woods yet. I know as far as laws go, I know we have the ability to. I don't know if it'll get my way or not with distribution, but I haven't.
I don't think they put it out regularly, though. I think they only put it out like maybe once a year, maybe twice. I don't know. I've never really looked into it much, but it's not something they put out on a regular basis, I don't think, mainly because of the way it's done, probably because, they hop it differently than the 60 and the 90, which are the more common ones. But I believe that they put it out like once a year, maybe twice. So, and when they put it out, be prepared to roll out your bankroll because I think like a 4-pack is probably close to $20 or something like that.
Yeah, I'm trying to think what I purchased. I picked up one, the Palo Santo Marron. I think it was $15 for the 4-pack.
Yeah, yeah. So I was on. If you look at my YouTube channel a little while ago, I know you commented on it, Tom, or you liked it. I think I posted a video about a couple hours ago prior to us doing this one, where I posted a video of a beer from Clown Shoes of Massachusetts.
Mm-hmm.
It's their Blakecorn Uni Dragon. It's a Russian Imperial Stout, 12.5%. And my local store, I have a grocery store in town that has a semi-decent craft beer, selection. It's not anything that's like go out of your way to go find, but considering it's only a mile or so from my house, it's a great place for me to go if I'm in a pinch and I'm really looking for something kind of unusual. But what they do is that they don't like to keep stuff on the shelf that long. And so this stuff hasn't been selling well. I think it's like an $8 to $10 bottle, $8 to $10 per bottle. And they knocked them all down to there were like 7 or 8 of them down to $3.99 on clearance. I picked up 3 or 4 of them. I'm letting one sit in the cellar. I've already had a couple, and but it's an imperial stout. It's 11 months old. You can't go wrong. It still tastes as good as it did probably 11 months ago. I can't argue. $3.99 for a nice imperial stout. How can you go wrong with that?
Now, in many cases, imperial stout will get better the longer it sits, especially if it's barrel aged. A barrel aged. I mean, I've hung on to some milk here for a couple years, and it gets better the longer I keep it.
Yeah, this one wasn't barrel aged. This is a straight up imperial stout, but it had all the potent, the sweet, dark roasted malts that you expect. The alcohol bite, I think, has probably mellowed down somewhat in the last 11 months. I didn't try it back in May or June of last year when it first came out. I expected it was more boozy then, but it wasn't quite as boozy now. It still had some booze, but it really wasn't anything I couldn't tolerate. So I was quite pleased. It's something I'm going to probably put in the cellar and hopefully try again several months from now and see how it is then.
Nice. That sounds good.
Yeah.
So tell folks what your YouTube channel is for folks that want to find you.
Well, the best way to find me is New England Beer Reviews. NEBR stands for New England Beer Reviews. And sometimes if you punch in that as a search engine, New England Beer Reviews, you should bring up my channel. My name is Jeffrey Lyons, so my YouTube account is under the name of Jeffrey Lyons. People don't think of Jeffrey Lyons. Well, they might think of the movie critic Jeffrey Lyons.
There you go.
Who I'm not related to or anything, but but if you punch in, New England Beer Reviews, it should give you some hits on some of my videos. And I'm not quite as active as you are, Tom. You put out, several a week. I put out maybe one or two a week. You'll put out like 5 or 6 a week sometimes. So, but I do put them out every couple of days and mostly on the weekends. And my beer is all about, the beer I talk about is all from New England. Though I did talk about a few videos ago, I'm sort of thinking of expanding a little bit. I get people who wonder, ask me about other beers, what I think of beers from outside of New England. And I don't only drink New England beers. I like beers from all over, but I've sort of thought of expanding. I love Belgian style Abbeys and whatnot, and triples and quads. And I was thinking of adding sort of a section of Belgian style beers to my channel. So I could be NEBR, New England Belgian Beer Review, NEBBR. And I mean,
there's a Louisiana beer review out there, and he doesn't do just Louisiana beers. There's an Arkansas beer reviews that doesn't do just Arkansas. I think the NEBR could be just where you're from. I don't think it necessarily has to, pigeonhole what beers you do.
Well, when I first started the channel, I've been doing it for 7 years, almost 7.5, coming on 8. I'm sort of, I hate to say I'm one of the pioneers because I'm not really, but I'm sort of in the early batch of people who started doing beer reviews way back when. And I was trying to be doing something different at the time. And I decided I would just focus on New England beers, and particularly in New England, as you well know, and a lot of beer fans know, that there's this New England IPA style that's just so popular amongst people these days. I don't do a lot of those, but they've become sort of the style that people go after nowadays. And I'm kind of, I pick up a few of them from time to time, but I really probably ought to do a few more because I think people might like to watch those.
Well, that style is very trendy right now. That very cloudy, murky, fruity IPA. Yeah, they're very trendy.
Yep, that's true. And and a lot of these breweries only make them available in their breweries. You have to it's one of these situations where you have to wait in line for a period of time to pick up whatever. Well, you're allowed to have 6 cans today. So pay us your money, take your 6 cans, But we got 3 of this and 3 of that, for example. And I'm like you in that sense. It's kind of like, why do I want to wait in line for an hour to to get 3 or 6 different beers? I mean, I don't mind. It'd be nice to try them, but it just seems like such a waste of time to sit out there. But there are people that just love it. They'll go out there and just wait and wait and wait, and they love to show off the fact, oh, I got like this, all these Trillium and Treehouse brews, and they're great beers. I'm not going to be critical of them. They're excellent beers. I've had a few, but do I want to spend all that time waiting in line, to get 5 or 6 cans of beer? It's hard to say. And spend $40 doing it.
Yeah, I refuse to do it. I mean, a lot of folks do it just sort of as a badge of honor. Look what I did. You know, it's that real trendy beer. It's not the folks that are necessarily drinking craft beer because they love it. It's the folks that drink craft beer to bring attention to themselves.
Yeah, and that I guess I could agree with that. But I'm not being critical of the beer itself. When you get to try those particular beers, they really are good. I'm not going to put them down in any way, shape, or form. It's just that the whole idea of waiting in line, sitting there, and hopefully, if you're
I
lucky enough,
agree. I
if
won't
they
wait
don't,
in line for anything. There are too many craft beers available on the shelf. I don't wait for anything.
yeah. And here in New Hampshire, we've got some great breweries, but I can find stuff that's just as compatible to Trillium and Treehouse, and those well-known breweries like that, Hetty Topper and whatever. And I can find just as comparable ones here in New Hampshire that you don't have to wait in line for. Stoneface, their beer is fairly available. From the Barrel is from Londonderry, New Hampshire. Their beer is fairly easy to come by. You don't have to wait in line for a long period of time. And their stuff is right up there with all those beers, I think.
So, Jeff, you also have a Facebook page. You want to tell folks about that?
Yeah, my Facebook page, you got to go to Facebook. Probably the best way to find it, it's listed as NEBR, just like my channel. Probably the best way to find it would be, key in New England Beer Reviews, but because it's got like 15 something numbers, it's NEBR though. If you key in NEBR, I think you should be able to find it. I got about 155 to 160 or so followers, which to me that's pretty exciting because I just had a new one the other day, so it's people are finding my channel and my page, and it's kind of exciting to me because I like being able to share my interests with these people.
You're also involved with some music groups on Facebook as well. Some vinyl communities. You're a big vinyl aficionado or collector.
Yeah, just as you called me, I was listening to an old Mike Oldfield album from 1979. It wasn't Tubular Bells. That's the one everyone knows him for. He put out dozens of albums, but everyone knows him for Tubular Bells. But I was listening to one of his later albums, which is quite nice. It's got a lot of these sort of elite, sort of esoteric artists who are backing him up. You have to be into the style of music to hold the R, but like Philip Glass was one of them on there. Pierre Morlaine. There's some other people who are kind of they're not really well known unless you know that type of music. And he had quite a nice backup of people working on that particular album. I was listening to the album Platinum. So I post these pictures on YouTube vinyl community sometimes, and on the Google Plus vinyl community page. So I got 700 or so record albums. I mean, I worked in radio broadcasting for 18 years of my life, and so I learned a lot about music, and not necessarily the music that everyone's familiar with. What would happen is that radio stations would get free copies of records from the record companies, promotional copies, try to get you to play their music and so on. And some of these things were just complete duds. They weren't commercial successes. But I used to like to listen to all those albums, these albums that no one ever heard of. It's like, wow, this has some good music on it. So I'd rescue them from the dumpster and take them home,
I used to have a lot of those too. I had one album from a guy I really liked. His name was Rick DeFay, and his only real claim to fame was in '82 he played guitar with Aerosmith. Right when Joe Perry and Brad Whitford left the band, Jimmy Crespo joined Aerosmith and replaced Joe Perry, but Rick DeFay replaced Brad Whitford. But a lot of people didn't know that he had a solo album 2 years before, in 1980. That album was brilliant. I mean, it never got any airplay. But boy, if you could ever come across that Rick DeFay album, it was absolutely genius.
I have to keep it in mind. There are a few vinyls back in vogue, as everyone knows.
Yeah.
A few stores in my area which sell
sound of vinyl. You can get there's something special about the sound of vinyl. You can get cleaner sound with other mediums, but there's something special about a record.
Yep, and the problem with records, I love records too because I have so many of them, but they skip and stuff. Some of my older records skip a little bit. They've moved around. I've moved like 7 or 8 times in my life, and after a certain point in time, they you don't listen to them that often. They get a little warped and stuff, but still, you're right. There's a nice feel to vinyl. I haven't really gone out and bought any new vinyl. whenever I buy vinyl, I do buy it from time to time. I usually go to a used record store, and I might find some album from years past that, oh yeah, I remember this album, and I want to pick it up, for example.
Yeah, even when you get some crackles, it just kind of adds character to the
Oh
record.
yeah, oh yeah.
Some records sound better once they've got a little age on them. Somewhere so somewhere between new and a scratch, it's that space. You get that sweet spot in the middle.
What I'd really like to get is a new turntable. My turntable is 35 years old. It has a belt-driven turntable, so
Oh wow!
it's got this rumble to it. So whenever I listen to music, it's kind of all the way through it. It's frustrating. At the time, I really didn't notice it. 35 years ago, but it was actually top of the line back in those days. But nowadays, they've got other turntables that don't have this belt on them, so you don't hear this kind of rumbling underneath, and they're much more cleaner sounding.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah,
you and I talk about craft beer. We also talk about whiskey. We have a whiskey group on Facebook.
we sure do, and I don't have any whiskey in front of me. I might have run down some.
Yeah, we should have some. But the question I want to ask you is kind of odd. We talk about food and beer pairings a lot.
Yeah.
But have you put any thought to alcohol and music?
No, I really haven't given much thought of it. Although I will say, if I drink too much alcohol, I listen to a lot of music. It's kind of like I'm in the mood. It's like, oh yeah, I'm feeling kind of mellow right now. I'm feeling kind of high right now. Whatever the emotion will be, and I'm going to put on this type of music and listen to it.
I used to go to a lot of blues clubs way back when, and I started watching how, especially the older bluesmen would drink. And a lot of them would have, some would drink whiskey neat, some whiskey on the rocks, and I'd watch their pairings. A lot of them would have beer with their whiskey. But I started equating certain alcoholic beverages to certain types of music.
Yeah. Well, I guess I kind of think that way too. But to me, it's more like a music style. If I've had a few beers, I feel kind of mellow, so I'm going to put on like some ambient type, easy to listen to, relaxing music, like this Mike Oldfield I was talking about. Or sometimes if I've had a few beers, I might get a little, frisky. I guess that's the right word. I hate to use that word, so I put on something more poppy and upbeat, and metal or something like that.
I like to pair a Manhattan, say, with some nice jazz.
Yeah, jazz. I like smooth jazz quite a lot.
I've got my Michael Frank side. I'll have some nice whiskey neat, or maybe a Manhattan. And just relax and sip that drink so slowly.
Yeah, I like smooth jazz a lot. Metheny. There's a few others I like. Passport. I'm talking about some old bands, but still.
I used to listen to Spyro Gyra back in the 70s.
Yeah. They're good. I know them. Yep, I know them. Good band. Yeah.
Return to Forever. Are you familiar with Return to Forever?
Oh yeah, I know who they are too.
That was a great band. That was like probably the original jazz supergroup. I mean, it had Chick Corea, Al Di Meola, Stanley Clarke on bass. I mean, they were just an amazing band.
They were quite good.
The Romantic Warrior album around here somewhere.
I got Jean-Luc Ponty is someone else I like. Pat Metheny I quite like a lot.
Pat Metheny I used to listen to a lot. Metheny did a lot of fusion. He wasn't just solely jazz. He also did a lot of film work as well. Did a lot of scores.
Yep, and he's still touring because I actually am.
Larry Carlton on that same lines as Larry Carlton's the same type of player as Metheny. Also did a lot of.
You're bringing up some names I'm very familiar with. Yeah, you're right. Names I just don't think of it, but you're bringing them up, and I know exactly who they are. Yeah. So
I like you drink a certain way when you listen to certain music. Like if I'm listening to jazz, I drink slower. If I'm playing some heavy rock or heavy metal, I tend to drink faster. Do you notice that, or is it just me?
Yeah, I would say that to some extent. I mean, when I drink beer, it's kind of like I'm in the mood to hear this certain type of music.
Yeah.
And I guess it depends on how far. If I've had to do 2 beers or 3 beers or whatever, it's kind of like I'm really in the mood to listen to this. I'm in a mellow mood, so I'm going to put on some smooth jazz. Or I've had a few beers, it's got me really pumped up. I'm all excited, anxious, angst, whatever you want to call it, and I'm going to put on some rock and roll or something like that.
Crank some AC/DC or something. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then I guess probably like most people, I imagine you have some similar stories that when you reflect back to your youth, you start thinking of certain bands and want to play them more.
Yep. Oh, yeah. Well, since this vinyl phase, this vinyl thing has really taken off again in the last 3 or 4 years. It's kind of like I've had these vinyl albums, for years and years and years. I bought them all in the 70s and the 80s and maybe a little bit in the 90s, but mostly the 70s and the 80s. So I've got 600 or 700 record albums. And some of them I haven't listened to since like the 70s or the 80s. And it's kind of like I'm thinking, I have a different feel. I have a different opinion of them now because when I bought them at the time, I may have bought them because I liked a particular song by the band or something. And the rest of the album, I just really didn't pay that close attention to. But sometimes when I bring up these albums I haven't listened to in 30 years, it's kind of like listening to them for the first time. And it kind of, it kind of brings out a whole different perspective on it. It's kind of like, wow, this was a really good album, and why didn't I listen to it more? That kind of thing.
Yeah. Yeah, I do the same thing. It's funny. There's a lot of bands that I really liked, 20, 30 years ago, and I put it on now, and I'm not crazy about it. Then there's a band that I really didn't pay much attention to, and all of a sudden, for some reason, the music resonates now. You think it's just how you just change with age?
Yeah, no, I know, and it's kind of like I understand what they're doing now. Back then, it was kind of like, what are they doing with this music? And but now I'm listening to it, it's like, well, I understand what they're doing. I understand the message they're trying to bring out, or I understand the emotion they're trying to bring out in this particular piece of music, and so on. Yeah, so no, and I've been really listening to a lot of. My son bought a little cheapo vinyl record player, and he listens to it. He's starting to get into vinyl. He's got like 4 or 5 albums, but I can't tell him. I got plenty of albums down cellar. If you want to listen to some good classic rock, grab them and listen to them. So
you're a lot like me. Is you don't have just one style you listen to. You like many genres.
Right, correct. But the one thing I'm not really into is really rap. I like the occasional rap song, but I don't like gangster rap, because that's just, to me, that's vile. But there's some rap music I can get into if it's a good poetic statement they're making of some kind, where they're not bashing the society or bashing police officers or talking about drugs or whatever you want to call it. And then there's some country music I just can't quite get into that much. But some that I really like, But for the most part, I like catchy tunes I can sing along with or tap my feet to. I also like music that experiments a little bit. I was back in the 70s, they called me Spaceman because I listened to a lot of bands like Tangerine Dream and, and Brian Eno and stuff like that. And they used to call me Spaceman because the music in the 70s back then, it was like, wow, what are you listening to? And Mike Oldfield. And then, but nowadays that's considered new age,
Yeah.
So
do you have go-to bands that you like to pull out every once in a while?
I was a big Bowie fan. I've got just about every album he's ever done, including a few I probably shouldn't say to the world that I have that are bootleg.
Oh, go ahead, got a couple of we don't have anybody. Well, we had one viewer for a while, but we just lost him. So go ahead.
I got a couple of bootlegs by him,
So Bowie had an interesting change throughout his career.
Yeah, well, that's why I liked him.
I guess that's what I meant to say. But did you have a particular phase of Bowie that you prefer to?
No, I tried to say I like just about every. The only thing I didn't like by him was when he went really super metal with this tin machine thing he put out around.
Yeah, I actually
mid
like that era, but
89, 90.
The Ziggy Stardust era.
But I like his music. Every era with him was so different. And then I liked Pink Floyd, of course, and big fan of Supertramp. I like, there's a lot of stuff I like that you probably haven't heard of, just because of my radio career. I had access to a lot of music you wouldn't have heard of, and I'm a big fan of reading liner notes. So I look at an album cover.
Oh yeah.
Who's playing the guitar here? Who's playing the drums here?
Me too. That's what I miss. I would buy that album and I would just I'd put it on and I'd read the liner notes as I was listening. Yeah, I'd read every word.
Yeah, and I read the liner notes and say, oh, the guitar, the keyboardist is so and so. So let me see if so and so has any albums of his own. I'd look for them, and it's like, oh yeah, he does. So I'll go pick up a couple of albums by him, that kind of stuff. So that's kind of how I did it, you know. But I like the 80s new wave sound quite a lot. I was really into that scene. I didn't really dress the part, but I really just like that whole kind of simplicity, catchy, danceable
Hmm.
pop tune stuff, you know, from 80 to about 83 or thereabouts. I like that quite a lot. So anyway.
Well, here you go. Hey, I don't want to run this video long. Again, it was kind of an experiment. I've been messing with. I've been having issues with this camera for the longest time, and I kept trying to reset it, and I couldn't get to work. So I just uninstalled it and tried to bring it back, and I just wanted to see if it worked. So I want to thank Jeff Lyons from NEBR for joining me for my experimental live video here. Thanks, Jeff. You got any last words for anybody that may want to listen to us at some point?
My last word is I'm out of beer. What am I going to do now, Tom?
See, that's why I finished up. Hey, this is Tom Beer Whisperer, beer evangelist, prolific beer drinker, purveyor of wisdom, and all around good guy.